Welcome back to episode 4 of the Young Bucks. New guest today, Alistair King, our flatmate.
G'day.
I first met Alistair when I did my internship at Zuru. Well, I actually didn't meet him because he was overseas travelling.
I met you when you moved into my flat, mate.
Met him when I moved into his flat. We all flat together now. When Alistair's home, busy man. So I guess Alistair, introduce yourself, what you do and stuff like that.
Yeah, cheers, mate. So I started up a pet food business called Nude about 2 years ago now. So partnered up with guys at Zuru for that, which is cool. So moved up from Dunedin to start that one. And then, rolls out NZ Oz next few weeks or a couple months. So
yeah, big things going on for Nude, eh? Always travelling, just got that from
it's busy.
overseas.
Yeah, after a couple of weeks up in Europe, so it was good.
Awesome.
Just chime in real quick. Sorry, working with the amateurs. Can you guys turn your phones over and turn them on mute? I think people can hear it buzzing around.
Is it? Oops.
Good man. Good man.
Amateur hour. Look at that. So, I guess a further bit back on Alistair is he did Young Enterprise Scheme, right, in 2016.
Yeah, 16.
We're all past pupils of the Young Enterprise Scheme, all past winners, might I add. bit of a throw around there. So what was your kind of thing at Young Enterprise? What was your whole business model around that?
Yeah, so we did a children's book called Where's Woolies. So basically took the idea of Where's Wally, turned it into sort of New Zealand version, which we spent about a year developing. Had a good group of guys down in Nelson did that with, and then we basically we spent like the whole year in 2016 just like going hard with that, selling at markets, door knocking bookstores, just trying to get it in basically, and like absolutely loved it. It was just so much fun, and that was like the whole reason I'm kind of doing what I am now. Before that, didn't even really think of business. None of the family was in business, but then basically from 10 minutes after doing that, I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the same with me. I was not interested in business.
They don't really teach it, eh?
No,
it's not like
until you kind of get into the Young Enterprise Scheme where it kind of takes off on its own little story. So another bit of background is you went to Dunedin, didn't you, for a year? To study something or party or what combination
study. Finance, psychology.
Yeah. Too. Do you use that much?
No, not really. To be honest, I didn't. The psychology a little bit actually. It was more just like interest stuff, not really applicable work stuff. But it was pretty interesting, the psychology side, and just like understanding people and understanding how people make decisions and stuff, which was quite cool.
University is an interesting piece, right? Like, so Grayson and I obviously didn't go to university, and you did. But we all, I guess, leaving high school, were in the same, had the same frame of mind. We'd all started a Young Enterprise Scheme. We were all doing reasonably well. We were all, selling, making good money, retailing, all that sort of stuff, beyond probably what traditional Young Enterprise businesses look like. Why uni? Because I know we've had a few discussions, obviously living together, about this. Why uni? Why not carry on? Where's Wooly?
Yeah, I mean, I guess looking at it in hindsight, a lot of people would say it was probably pointless. I went for 1 year, left, dropped out, $20,000 debt. But I still think it was worth it, and I'm still glad I made a decision because I grew up in Nelson, small town, spent 18 years of my life there, and one of the main priorities for me when I was leaving school was getting out of Nelson, getting out of that bubble. And so uni was a real simple way to do that without without like, you know, having to pay all this money and stuff like that. Just go to uni, get your loan, spend a year with mates. And it was at that stage I didn't, I knew I wanted to be involved in business, but I didn't really know what the next step was. And so for me, it was a situation of the best place for me to be while I figure that out is university. It's not for me to be sitting in Nelson. And it's not for me to move somewhere and do a job, which I'm not even sure if I'm going to like yet. So it was quite simple for me. It's like, don't want to get stuck in Nelson, so let's get it to uni, figure it out along the way, and then if I finish my degree, great. If I don't, doesn't matter.
So it was more of a, I guess, a time filler in a sense of go and discover who you are and what your values are and what you really want to do.
Yeah, it formed a couple of purposes, but that's certainly one of them.
You touched on an interesting piece there, the bubble, I guess you called it the bubble of Nelson. Small town, small crew. Like, how many people in Nelson? What, like 50,000?
50,000. Oh, yeah. It's
50,000?
City of Nelson, mate.
Well, it's tiny, right? 50,000 is, you know, I grew up in Auckland, so it's nothing.
A little bit different.
What do you think was the benefit? What did you get out of coming from a small town, and how has that really played a part in kind of who you've become and what you do now, if anything?
I don't think the benefits are necessarily due to it being a small town. I think it's what was in that town which was the benefit, which was great school, great family, great mates, essentially, and great opportunities. So introduced, like Nelson College has an awesome business program, a really good teacher that prioritized it, which was cool. So I think that was really the advantages. I was lucky enough to travel a bit as a kid, so that was quite cool to get out of Nelson and also see a little bit of the world, and that gave a lot of perspective around that Nelson's great, but a lot of people don't have it like that, and also Nelson's quite small compared to all the other opportunities out there. And I think a lot of people, if you stayed in that small town and never really saw much else, you'd kind of get used to it, and that's not a bad thing, but there's a lot more out there.
What was the mindset like of your other peers at high school? Were they going out to uni? Were they just sticking around in Nelson? Was
super mixed day.
Super mixed.
Yeah, it's lot went to uni, lot didn't, lot still at uni, lot still aren't. So
how do you you know, I think something we've probably got to acknowledge here is our privilege. We live very privileged lives, come from very good families and that sort of thing. But you know, there's a lot of people out there that I would say are in small towns, similar to the Nelsons, whether they be in New Zealand or around the world. It's very easy to get caught up and go, you know, I'm from a small town. I moving to the big city and the big smoke to run a multi-million-dollar business. It's not possible. It's impossible. I can't do it. I've got to stay in my little small town and run dad's workshop, and you know what I mean? How hard was it to really make that jump and go, I'm going to consciously, it's not an unconscious thing, it's a conscious thing of going, I'm going to leave Nelson and I'm going to go for something bigger?
Far easier than anyone would think. I think a lot of people get caught up in decisions like that, but if you actually like run a risk analysis on it, it's actually not that big a decision.
But I think we come from like, I'm going to challenge that because I would disagree in a sense of, you know, we live very privileged lives. You had the financial backing from your own 2 feet. You worked for that, but you had the financial backing to go, I can afford to move to Auckland City.
Well, so I guess there's 2 steps, right? There's moving to Dunedin and moving to Auckland. So the Dunedin piece, I didn't have any savings really. It was all just loan from government. Didn't get any money from the parents. So at that stage, it was just like, okay, anyone, or a lot of people can go to university. The resources are there. And in terms of worst case scenario, if I don't like it, I can drive back up to Nelson.
The Dunedin trip was quite an easy one compared to the stories you were telling me about when you came up to Auckland, right? It was a complete different there. You were telling stories about where you stayed in your first few nights down here. Do you want to elaborate a bit on that one?
Yeah, well, I don't want to get in trouble, but yeah, so when I first moved up here, I didn't really have any money, and I wasn't really sure what was going to happen work-wise at that stage. So I had like a little homestay, and I think it was in like Glenfield or something, and it was like the basement of some family, and they had like a whole lot of homestay people from around the world, and I was sleeping like in this, it was like their basement. It was like concrete floor, and this guy next to me who was like pretty rough looking dude, like nice enough, but like pretty rough. And I was like this like 19-year-old kid who just fresh in Auckland, like didn't know what I was doing. And that was like 3 or 4 weeks doing that, which was quite cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's all part of it, right?
Yeah.
Like I think if you really want to like do something and you commit enough to it, then you'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah, just before we touch on what you're doing now and kind of dive deep into a few of those topics, you're a very, hate to say this, but you're a very driven and motivated person, right? You're very, you know what you want, you will go and you will get it. Yeah, where does that come from? Because not everybody's got that. I didn't have that when I started. That was something I learned over time from my parents and things like that. Like, same. Where does that come from? And where does that, like, inner drive go, I'm gonna fucking do this?
Yeah, so I certainly didn't have that. I am, like, notoriously, like, lazy. If you ask my parents, like, I was the kid that just, like, would just sit in their room, like, do nothing. Like, I was pretty bloody lazy, and still am. Like, I really have to, like, watch myself so I don't slip back into that. And I guess that's why I go so hard the other way, because, like, for me, it's super easy to slip back into that laziness and I just do not want to end up back there. So I kind of go hard the other way. But for me, it was really the year at university made a big difference. Few, like, life events happened there, like breakups and stuff like that, and that really made me step back and gave me a lot of, like, perspective. And that year was quite reflective about thinking about, like, what was important to me, what I wanted to do, stuff like that. And I really just came to the conclusion that, like, I wanted to look back at my life at the end, be, like, proud of what I did, and know that I did absolutely everything I could. And then also, as you said before, like, we're super, super lucky to not only be, like, alive now, but growing up in New Zealand, and then me growing up in Nelson, like, the odds of that happening are, like, ridiculous. So there's so many people that would kill to be in that position, and so I don't think I could live with myself if I thought that I wasted it at the end of it. So I think a lot of it comes from just don't want to regret anything.
Yeah, we'll touch on the relationship piece later, because there's a few
questions
we'll touch on there, and we know the officer's watching. But yeah, give us a bit of a rundown. What are you doing now? What is Nude?
Yeah, so essentially we're a new age pet food brand.
What does that mean, new age?
So developed for sort of new, fresh audiences. So think millennial, younger audiences, essentially. Most of the pet food brands you see out there are 50, 60 years old. About 80% of them are owned by two big chocolate companies, who I won't name, but they are...
We can name them.
Yeah.
I think one of them is Nestle.
Nestle Mars, yeah. So they essentially have duopoly over the pet food around the world, and most of the brands you see on shelf are owned by them. A lot of them are super old, and basically full of crap. Like, the whole reason we chose pet food is we were walking through the supermarket, we're looking at all the categories, and we picked up the pet food bags, turned them over, looked at the ingredients, and just, like, absolutely amazed by the stuff in there, eh? Just absolute crap.
You say we, who's we?
So me and Nick, who's CO0, who we partnered up with for the... For Nude.
And sorry, so Grayson and I know Nick quite well, obviously, as well, and he's quite a well-known figure in New Zealand now. How did you get thrown into that situation? Because that's quite an interesting thing to get thrown into, right? How did you get there?
Thrown into...
into meeting Nick, and then, going down the path of Nick going, I'm going to start something with a 20-year-old who knows virtually nothing about business. Yeah. Well,
so when I was at uni, I spent a lot of time, and probably more time than I was studying, on working for free for a bunch of people. So reached out to a couple of people I admired and mentors and stuff, and just said, look, I'll just work as hard as you like. Like, I just want to work for free, learn from you. Because at that stage, I knew that I wanted to be in business, but I didn't know what the next step was. So the natural thing I thought was, okay, talk to the people that know what they're doing, and see what opportunities come off that. And so I remember spending like the couple of weeks before my final exams, I was spending, like, most of the time in the library. Instead of studying, I was, like, researching pet food or something like that. So it was that's kind of how it started, and then through that. Got introduced to people, which eventually led to Nick. And then it was just like luck and timing, to be honest, that he was back in NZ and looking for young people. So,
and I think a cool thing that Nick's talked about when he did one of his talks last year or the year before is there's a figure, I'm not actually sure what percent it is, but it's, you'll probably know working at the Zoo office, is that X% of millennials don't want to buy the exact same brands as their parents.
77%.
77%.
That's crazy.
That's a lot, just because their parents bought them.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's a lot of it's just different preferences of younger people, right? Like, you see it in probably your own shopping behaviour. I certainly see it in mine, in terms of the things you care about in brands is just completely different to what it was 30, 40 years ago. So I guess what we're trying to do is when you've got pet food brands that are 50 years old, they haven't had that chance to adapt and sort of become relevant to those newer audiences. So there's a white space for someone to come in and create something that's a bit fresher, transparent, modern, I guess.
Why is that? I guess because everything you're saying sounds correct and makes sense. Apart from the one fact that that I'm confused on is these large brands, these Mars, these Nestle's, they have all the resources, all the money in the world to create these new age brands. Why are they not doing it?
Because the bigger you get, the slower you get, and the more complacent you get, right? So these big companies, they get massively inefficient. They get all these bureaucracies, too many people, care too much about the bottom line, and just over time, less and less relevant to the final consumer. And that's why a company like Amazon's like so unstoppable, because their whole thing is just don't forget about the customer. Because as long as you don't forget about the customer, you're always going to be relevant. And the minute you start caring about the bottom line or anything else, then you start becoming irrelevant, and that's when there's an opportunity for someone to come in and create something that customers are going to like more.
Is that a change we're seeing across traditional business now? As people are moving more to consumer-led decisions as opposed to bottom-line-led decisions, or is it still a very slow changing industry, or is it not changing at all?
I think there's certainly some change. You're seeing a lot of new companies come in that are getting a lot of traction because they're relevant to the consumer. And I think you're seeing a little bit of maybe more out of survival than anything else of these bigger companies realizing hey shit, we've got to do something here. So yeah, it's definitely a trend. And you see it everything is becoming. While everything's becoming more global, it's also becoming more local, right? Like everyone wants to know that their tomatoes are grown down the road, and they want to know that they want to know the name of the farmer or whatever it is. So yeah.
Does social media and influencers play a big part in how you market Nude, and how people buy anything?
Yeah, for sure. It's just efficiencies, right? Like being able to reach that many people and be targeted with the way you're doing it, and having a two-way conversation with a customer. Like if you look at traditional advertising, a TV ad or something, you're putting something out into the world that is disruptive into someone's life, and if they like it, don't like it, whatever it is, they can't say anything back to you. And so the actual data you get around the quality of that piece of content is very, very limited compared to what you get on social media, where if you put something out, people are engaged in real time. And we've had it with stuff where we've put something out and we've seen comments and we're like, oh, hang on, we've made a mistake here. Let's change this.
Yeah, there was a story of that happening not long ago. Big, large corporate put something out, within 15 minutes there was backlash in the media.
Who was that?
And within 20 minutes it was, I can't remember who it was.
I mean, we didn't have anything scandalous, so.
Yeah.
But it was, it's just, you learn.
It is interesting. It is interesting, right? Because 20 years ago, influencers wasn't a thing. Social media marketing,
wasn't a thing. I would
thing.
argue they were, but it was influencers in entertainment, right? You got your TV, your movie stars. It's still influence. It's just a different
Are they
way.
influencing without the use of social media? Because social media is quite new, right?
Sure.
And even though it's been around, 10, 15, 20 years probably, it's only really taken off, I'd say, in the last 5 to 10.
Sure. I guess it depends how you define it, right? Like I would argue an influencer is anyone who has influence and therefore has an audience. And so...
What defines a good influencer?
It depends what you're trying to get out of them, I guess. Or
in a broad sense, to you, what would you consider a good influencer?
Someone who's authentic. Someone who... it almost sounds counterproductive, but cares more about what they're doing than the brands they're working with. So if they're working with us, we don't want them to sponsor everything Nude and say this is all, because it's inauthentic. And the second it becomes inauthentic, it just defeats the purpose. People see through it. We want to provide product to people and them to give their honest opinion, even if that's them not liking it, right? It just builds trust.
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying that, because you're framing the word influencer as what most traditional people would consider an influencer, which is an online figure, right? With a large following. Traditionally, that's an influencer, correct?
In the last 5-10 years, yeah.
See, whereas my frame, and I don't understand the influencer game, and I try to understand it, and I don't know, I just can't, because can't see the value in 90% of influencers in today's market purely based on the reason that it's lacking impact.
You're probably right.
Right? So I was talking to Grayson about this the other day, and I was saying, what is an influencer? And to me, an influencer is somebody creating impact, right, in somebody's life.
Interesting. Well,
because influence without impact is not influence. It's I'm talking to you.
Sure. So I guess the point is then how do you measure the impact? And that judges whether, by your definition, they're an influencer, right?
Well, that's the definition, right? Because I'd look at someone like you and say, you could be considered an influencer because you're making an impact, right? And it's subconscious, but you would make an impact in a lot of people's lives going, this guy's young, he's 20, he's out there, he's making his moves, he's making money, he's building a brand, he's making an impact on the world by changing the way people perceive pet food, for example. That could be considered influence, right?
Yeah, I guess it depends how you define it, but sure, like impact, it's I guess a good way of looking at it. And I guess just pulling it back to marketing, the whole point of if you're running a campaign, as you say, is you want to be able to measure the impact. There's no point in doing something if you can't see if it works or not. And so part of it is building in, a set of criteria where you can measure that impact against.
Here's an interesting question.
Go for it.
You talked about, these new brands and Nude specifically being around not the bottom line. It's about the new age of how people care about brands, what's in your food, what am I eating, what am I consuming, what is it doing for the environment, right? Sure. At what level is... Shit, I forgot my question.
Oh, no.
Come on.
No, I've blanked. Around impact, right? And you're saying, sorry, I've got it. Boom. Around measurables. Yeah. What do you consider, success in that space? Because you're not measuring impact in terms of bottom line, as you say, right? You're not.
You are. It's just not necessarily the primary thing, right? So it's more about what is the.
So how do you define impact in your day-to-day business?
So in Nude specifically, I would say for us, it's like changing the perceptions of the pet food industry and bringing away more towards transparency and, clean ingredients and stuff like that.
Is that one of the big trends you reckon, is transparency in brands?
It's, not just in pet food, but everywhere, right? Just transparency, sustainability, transparency of supply chain, transparency of quality, ingredients, claims, everything. So I think that's pretty important, and I guess that's the thing we identified as the opportunity to create something. And
why do you think that's changed from, I guess, we call them boomers to millennials to Gen Zs to Gen A? Yeah. Why is transparent? Well, transparency it's an interesting change over time, right? Because it never used to be the big thing.
Yeah, do you know what I think it is? I think it's internet and everything's open now, right? So before, your circle of what you engaged with was so much smaller, and then now the internet, anyone can communicate with anyone. Everything's up there. It's always there. It's there forever. Everyone is engaging with everything, and so the world is just naturally more abundant in information and stuff, going back and forth. So I think that it's just a natural byproduct of that, to be honest.
So it's more kind of how fast the influencer's now traveling, right?
Yeah, and how far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just going to take a divergent here. So you run, reasonably successful pet food business. It's been around a couple of years, and you lead a team of how many? 5, 6, 7, 8 around the world?
Yeah, I guess we've got people around the world that are working sort of part-time on it, but there's probably like 10 to 12 that are probably...
About a dozen people?
Across it, I'd say.
And I would, correct me if I'm wrong, 90% of them are younger than you? Older than you, sorry?
I'm 100% will be older than me, yeah.
So you're the youngest?
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Don't think about it, to be honest. And I don't think you necessarily need to, right? Like the hope when you're working with someone, I guess, is that you have a mature enough relationship where you respect them, they respect you, and age shouldn't even come into it. It should be, do they have a good idea or do I have a good idea, and who's
But it doesn't always happen, right?
Sure,
because I remember, even to a couple of experiences a week ago that I had where, I work with, a lot of the people I work with are older than me. And it's an interesting concept because there's still times where you'll go in and that mutual respect isn't there because you're younger.
Sure.
Or I've been in the industry for X amount of years. You don't know what you're talking about. You're a 20-year-old who's never made pet food in his life.
Sure.
Why should I listen to you?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it certainly does exist, and I guess the benefit of, I guess, having your own business or having your own thing means that there's less people that you have to, answer to in terms of the chain of command. But there's obviously outside stakeholders and
Well, there's
for us
suppliers
pitching-
and
Exactly.
like, as a young person, how do I navigate that? How did you navigate that? How did you navigate that world? How do you go out and find suppliers that are way more experienced, way older, have way more respect, and go, so what? I'm young. Who cares?
Yeah,
It's a pretty daunting thing to do.
To be honest, I don't really think about it too much. I think that initially, obviously, there's going to be some prejudice, and people are going to think certain things, and that's unavoidable. So if you get caught up in it, then it's really just wasting your own time. And if after X amount of time, you can't prove to them that you're good enough to do it, then they weren't the right person to work with in the first place. And so I think you just have to be conscious of that. And at the end of the day, if you're good people are going to respect you based on the quality of work as opposed to the age, your age. So yeah, it's certainly a factor though. I think I've probably been pretty lucky just working with good people, both internally and externally, that it's not something that I've had to confront too much. But I mean, like this, yeah.
So I know your team in New Zealand anyway are still quite young. The oldest is probably 25 maybe.
Bit younger, yeah.
Bit
They
younger.
were like 22, 23.
So they're all working in a high-paced, fast-paced startup, but technically they're not entrepreneurs, are they? Right? They're entrepreneurs. And for you, when you go to hire people like that, what is the kind of grounds that you're hiring on them when they're young? They've just come out of uni. Is it the hustle? Is it the degree they have behind them? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, so we just hired someone a few months ago, and the main thing we looked for, because there was a few of us sort of across it, was someone that fit really well to the culture. So that was like just genuinely a nice person, I think, is the biggest thing. If you're going to be working with them like every single day, you want to be able to get along with them, and that kind of part of that, but also secondary, is that they care enough and they're committed enough to give it their all, and there's, I guess, when you hire someone, there's a unspoken expectation that you will do everything to help them and they'll do everything to help you, and as long as that mutual respect is there, I think it can work. And then things like, I guess it depends on the task, but you want someone that's got a sort of a natural eye for that particular task and can pick things up quite quickly and learn quite quickly. But even if they don't, a lot of roles you can sort of grow into, I'm sure.
As a young person leaving school, leaving university, leaving previous jobs, and going to, has a conscious mind, wants to be involved in the right organization, what are the things they could be doing to really, it's these sorts of things you're not taught in school, right? Like when I was in school I wasn't taught what to do in a job interview or how to conduct yourself in certain situations. Like, where do you learn that? How do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you have to learn on the spot, right? Like I guess you guys probably did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you don't get taught in school. So I think I always sort of think if I was to do it again, like step one is just find out what you want to do, right? Like you don't know where you're going to, and you don't know how to get there until you know where you're going. So step one, find out what you want to do, and that's a lot of like trying different things and hoping you find something that just clicks. And then step two is kind of putting that path to get there, right? Doing it yourself, or going partnering with someone else, or finding someone who's there already and following their footsteps. So there's plenty of ways to do it, but I guess first step is find out what you want to do. So and some people aren't fortunate enough to find that out early, right? Like I have mates that are like mid-20s now and still don't know what they want to do, and that's fine. But it's also, I feel very grateful that sort of 18 I knew.
Yeah. Sorry, just one more on that is, and you touched on it just before around, it's important to figure out what you like, right? And what you're, not even what you like, but what you're passionate about. Where do you think you can make the most impact in the world, and what's something that really fires you up? There's a lot of pressure on young people. I've felt it, Grayson's felt it, you've probably felt it. It's a lot of pressure on young people leaving university, going into university, leaving high school.
Where do you think that pressure comes from?
I think it's the generational difference of, my parents were very, go to university, get a degree, go find a job and do that for the rest of your life. That was success. It's the definition of success, right? Is the definition of how we see success is changing over time with new generations, and people are understanding that success means more than just go get a job, go buy a house, go have a family, go have kids, go on a holiday, buy a boat, buy a batch, die. That's not success anymore. Like we've talked about it, and I've talked to many of my friends about it, and success now looks like, finding somewhere where you fit in, finding somewhere that you're comfortable to be yourself.
It's less specific, right? Like it's more it's more subjective than objective, I guess you could say. Like what you just described there, like buying a boat and doing this and this, that's a very like material thing that any single person can look at, like this is what I do. What you just touched on there is the second point. It's completely intrinsic, right? So, and I think you're exactly right that it is something that like what's successful for one person is not successful for another.
So how has your idea of success changed from your first year at uni to 2-3 years out of high school and running your own business now? How has that developed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I am quite intrinsically motivated, I'd say. So I kind of touched on it earlier, but a lot around just like not wanting to regret and wanting to make the most of the opportunities and stuff like that. So for me, success is living up to those, key pillars of what motivates me. And so that has, I wouldn't say it's changed necessarily, but I think it's strengthened since uni. Like those were kind of established at uni. The seeds were probably there before, but uni's when I sort of discovered it, and then it's just strengthened since then, I'd say.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky in the sense of, I had a discussion in this room off camera a couple of days ago around success and what that meant to a few of us in the room, and it became very apparent that, my definition of success is not a dollar figure.
How would you define it?
My definition of success now is around a couple of things, around impact, around purpose, around true influence, like we talked about just before, having the ability to find somewhere where you feel like you have a purpose, where you can make an impact on people's lives directly, not I am a marketing manager for a big car brand and people buy my cars and that's amazing impact. It's the impact of I've changed somebody's life, or I've changed the way they see something. And true influence around I've helped shape that person journey or that thing's journey on what it's become, what it's shaped to become, right? Yeah. But I think modern day success is still very monetary. Would you agree?
I think, I mean, if you're looking at Instagram and stuff, like sure, like I think it's trendy for it to be flashy, I guess, and show the monetary side of it. But I think I think true success, and I think probably most people understand that it is you're based off your own definition, not someone else's.
Why do we not follow that? As young people, we know that's we know that $1 million isn't going to make you happy. You can buy a lot of things, but you're not going to be truly happy. I think most people our age know that, right? Like if you think deep down, we know that. Why can we not
I don't think people have had the experience with money, right? Because with you working at Unfiltered, you were on good money, $100,000 a year, and I remember it was eating like pretty much 3 times a day, eating out, eating in a restaurant, buying this, buying that, and I think, just for you, what I think is, you've had the experience with a lot of money, you've lived a good bit of time on decent money, and there's a lot of people who have not experienced what money doesn't actually bring.
Money's a very dangerous thing.
Very dangerous.
Like with too much money, and you've seen it, like relaying a bit of my experience, a lot of money, you can go down some dangerous paths.
Yeah, I don't know I think there's some quote about like how money, like it doesn't like change you, like it just exposes like who you really are, right? And if you're someone that's like really insecure and has a whole lot of things that you I guess trying to hide or whatever, like having the money and having the resources, it just it just exposes your personality more and more, and it's going to make your problems worse and worse. But the flip side, I think, is also true, that if you're a good person and you really like, care about people, or really, sure of yourself, I think money can be used.
But
in
even
good
then,
ways.
money can be dangerous still, because I look back at it in that sense, and you can be a generous and caring and loving person, but with too much money, you can do a lot of the wrong things with that. You can go out and, I'll buy the round of drinks, I'll buy the next round of drinks, I'll buy dinner, I'll buy the next round of drinks.
Yeah. And
Where's your money gone? Or, we should go out and let's go go-karting. Okay, I'll pay. Because you feel like you're invincible. You've got this money.
Yeah, and I think that's like if that specific scenario would be like a personal insecurity, right? Like of not being,
So how do you manage that as a young person?
I don't know.
How do you manage money?
I don't really think about it too much. Like, it's not what motivates me. It's, as I sort of said, my definition of success is similar to yours. It's not a dollar figure at all. So it's not something that comes into it. And really all money is, I guess, a scorecard in a way, but also B, a tool to be used to, to help you progress more towards your specific definition of success and have more impact and stuff.
What do you mean
by
by scorecard?
Well, say you've got a business, right, and you've got investors, you have an obligation to those investors to return their investment. And so while profit is not the most important thing, it is, something that is an obligation to those people. And so growing the business not only grows the business, but it also gives you tools to be able to do more and more things. And if you've got good intentions, it means you've got more resources to act on those good intentions.
See, that shareholder return pisses me off.
Go on.
It grinds my gears because
we're not talking about a public company here, though, right? Like you've had investors before, right? Like you have an obligation to those.
Yeah, but both private and public. Like, I made it very clear whenever I raised money that yes, you will see this money back, but if you're investing, you're not investing to see 100 times that money back. Well, you're investing to see 100 times the impact I'm doing right now.
For me, it's exactly.
And
right?
that will mean that you will suffer in the profit making.
Sure, but for me, it's more around personal obligation, right? Like if I take someone's money, that's not mine. I don't own it.
Are you taking the money for the right reason then? Because that's another thing, right? Is I had a really good conversation with a very, very good friend of mine the other day around investing money, and especially as a young person, we've both seen many scenarios of this gone wrong, of raising money for the wrong reasons, and raising money is a difficult thing for anybody, and it's a very dangerous thing. It's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole you can fall down very quickly, right? Because you can raise money, you can lose money, then you can raise more money and lose money and raise more money and then spend it and then raise more money, and then eventually you're $7 million, $100 million of, look at WeWork.
Sure.
That's a very dangerous rabbit hole because they kept raising more money on the thought that what they were doing was going to return more.
I'm going to add an unpopular opinion here. I actually think it's more about the person than the money.
Oh, I 100% agree.
Yeah. I think it's...
In terms of who you're raising from? Raising from the right person?
And also the intent of the person raising it.
Totally.
Both, right? Both impact how that money is spent. So I think
that's a very popular opinion.
Well, I think a lot of people get scared off by the fact of like saying that that like money is not that money is not the problem, it's the person. I think you sort of said it before, like money can cause a lot of problems, but personally I think it's the person and how they use the money. And the problem is far too often that person uses it for the wrong reasons, and it goes to the head or this or that, and it has bad influences.
How do you stop that? Because go back to my experience with money, is I was in a very fortunate position as a young person to gain a lot of money very quickly, in your right sense, through working hard, by the way, working very, very hard as a young person. You in the same way, right? Working very hard and rightfully so as a young person, earning more money than most people our ages. How do you not let that get to your head? Because it's very easy to turn around and go, you're at uni, you're on student loan, I'm making thousands of dollars a week. It's very easy to do that,
Yeah, I mean, I think if you get really, really caught up in that, then there's a level.
How do you not get caught up? Is what I'm asking.
I think you have to be secure in yourself and understand that why, what it is, right? It's like, if we say we sell a bunch of pet food, it's not because I'm such an amazing person. It's because like people like the product, right? So understand.
But it's very easy to twist it and go, I'm an amazing person who made an amazing product. And
Sure.
it wouldn't be the product it is because I'm amazing.
Yeah, so that's where it comes from. If you've got security in yourself and you have the self-awareness to know like who you are, what you're good at, what you're not, then anything that happens outside of that, say someone bought a lot of pet food or whatever it is, that doesn't impact the way you feel about yourself. And say $100 million, dropped on my lap tomorrow, I'd hope that I was secure enough to know that,
God,
that wasn't mine or whatever, right?
God, I wouldn't. If $100 million fell on my lap, I'm out of here. Sorry to break it to you, I'm out of here.
Oh, mate, we'll fill the room in the flat.
Feel the rain.
Yeah, money. I'm very interested by the whole money talk, right? Because everybody uses money differently. Everyone experiences money differently. And it's perceived in a very odd way by a lot of people in terms of...
It's a bit of a buzzword, I think. Like it's something everyone has an opinion on, right? So it's like politics. Like everyone has money and
speaking of politics, somebody on our Instagram, by the way, if you don't follow the Instagram, little plug, follow it now. We put up
give us the handle. Give the followers.
What is it?
The Young Bucks.
The Young Bucks podcast.
Yep.
Follow it now.
Instagram.
If you don't, then you're getting cut. We put up a little thing to ask people to let us know what they wanted us to talk about on this podcast, and somebody said
Giles Foster.
Labour or National. So
yeah,
let's
I
go
mean,
there.
You asked me this off camera, and my answer was neither. And it's the truth, honestly. Like, I just do not engage in politics. I don't follow it. As I said before, I couldn't tell you one thing.
Is there
this government or the previous government?
Is there no interest in politics, or you don't understand politics?
I mean, I don't think anyone can fully ever understand politics, right? Like, it's a complicated thing. Apart from the great Matt Billington, of course. But I think I just don't see... There's no motivation to engage for me. It's not something that...
Do you think that's a common thread among young people?
I mean, I'd be answering purely anecdotally, but I would almost say the opposite. I think you see I guess it's more specific issues, say climate change. I think young people are particularly engaged in. Politics as a whole, I'm not sure.
I have the opinion that we are the most politically engaged generation.
Yeah, I see that.
For a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's, for me, that's purely anecdotally. But unless there could be some data around like voting statistics of like the last...
What's it like overseas? You do a lot of traveling. What's the political like?
It's funny, man.
It's funny. Because New Zealand's perceived in a very good way politically, globally. Everybody loves Jacinda.
Yeah.
But what's the political scene like overseas? You talk a lot to people overseas.
Yeah, so I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the US and everyone knows what's happening there. That's just, I always find that interesting, man. Like, as soon as you talk to someone in the States, within 10 seconds if they're red or blue, Like you walk into one state and it's all red. You walk into another, it's all blue. And that's interesting how polar it is versus somewhere like New Zealand, where I guess it's a reflection of the political parties being naturally closer, that you don't have that same discrepancy across every single issue. But the US is super polar. Where else have I spent time? China's just really interesting.
Well, we talked a bit about that, right? And I'm gonna pose you the question: would you rather live in a dictatorship or in a communism?
Dictatorship until it goes wrong. That's what I said before, right? Dictatorship's the most efficient way to govern until it goes wrong, because it's quick decision.
Is it the most efficient?
Well,
I guess it's the most efficient, but is it the most effective?
Well, if it's the most efficient in making decisions, so it's the most effective if those decisions are good. It's the most disastrous if those decisions are bad.
But I would say 90% of those decisions would be wrong.
Well, it depends who you're going to power, right? And the problem with it...
Well, no, but you can't have one true ruler. You can't say that everything he does is the right thing. Because without democracy, you don't know what the right thing is. Because you're only taking one opinion. So dictatorship would never work.
Why wouldn't you know what the right thing is?
Because how is one person being given the ability to say your decision is the most efficient decision and most effective decision always? It's not, because you haven't heard to little Joey down the street who might have a better idea.
I mean, I don't disagree. I'm not advocating for dictatorship on a podcast.
No, it's good, but I'm
like,
just, you know.
But you're exactly right. Like, I guess, say Matt Billington's dictator of a country, right? Like, and you have complete autonomy to make decisions, and you can make the decisions, and whatever you say goes. What that means is that whatever you do is going to happen very quickly and very efficiently without any pushback whatsoever. If you're making good decisions, that is objectively good. If you're making bad decisions, that's objectively bad. The problem with it is if you've got that much power, humans are just so naturally flawed that eventually you're just going to run with power go into your head and say oh, I can do whatever I want. And so I guess history would suggest that it tends to lean bad when you go that route because of having that much power centralized in one place. Do you disagree?
I honestly, right before I came here, I was watching Netflix and I was watching The Dictator.
But the Sacha Baron Cohen one.
The one
that's my reference point for that.
For this. And that's what I was going to bring up. That's a good way to show what.
It's a good movie, by the way.
It was a good movie. I haven't finished it yet, but.
Oh really? You finished halfway through?
I literally did 20 minutes.
Oh,
but back to that.
Did you get to the bit where?
There's a few crucial bits in there. Anyway, back to that's a good example of shit decisions, right?
Yeah.
It's one person fully in power and they think they know it all. And I think there's, as you were saying, there's a level of when things start going wrong, it starts going wrong quite exponentially fast, right?
Yeah, and I'm actually going to make a segue here because I think you can apply the same to companies, right? And running companies.
100%. I was just going to say the same thing.
Yeah, and so if you've got someone and I think it's a balance. I think that you need to be decisive, but you also need to listen to different people and understand there's so many things, man, that I am so bad at and that my opinion is completely irrelevant about. And so for me to even weigh in on that is just useless. It's just taken away from everyone else's. But you still need to, be able to recognize when someone's opinion's strong and then be decisive enough to okay, let's do that.
It's, it's directly relatable into every aspect of life.
Sure.
Work, politics, family, friends, relationships.
There's that interesting thing there. Have you heard that? I don't know. It's some biology thing around how
I failed
humans.
biology.
I dropped
You
it in
didn't
year
show up
11.
to biology. That's the problem.
I didn't.
I'm just not surprised, Matt. It's something that humans are designed to have 150 or something close relationships with close friends, and when it gets beyond that, it starts to sort of break down. And so it's interesting if you see a company, you hear so many stories of being so nimble when they're small and they everyone gets along and the culture's so great, but then when it grows and it flips over that threshold, it's all sorts of problems start coming in because being able to coordinate, communicate, and get more than that amount of people in the same direction on agreeing with each other and all feeling like they're heard is just inherently such a difficult thing to do, right? And I think it's something that any big company has to address, and I think it's super, super difficult.
How do you manage relationships with people?
Specifically around...
Well, I'm just going to do it. We're beating around the bush because it's a little bit touchy, but, you're a very motivated and driven person. You get up at 6 in.the morning, you go to the gym, then you go to work. You're at work by 8, and then you're not home till midnight, right? You work a long hours, right? I've been there, I've done that. It's crazy, I don't do it anymore. But how do you find time to balance family, friends, girlfriend, boyfriend, whichever one you've got, no discrimination?
I think it's just, values is really important. And then communication. So just thinking relationship with family and stuff like that. Lucky enough that they're super supportive, and I don't feel like they live in Nelson, I live in Auckland, right? So I don't feel like I have to, speak to them every single day, and I call them once a week, catch up.
What about for those people that don't have supportive parents, but in the situation like you, out there, go-getter, at university, at work, they're rolling, they're trying to build themselves into a position that they feel is successful, but they don't have a backing of very supportive parents, or maybe they've only got one or two really supportive friends. They don't have a partner, or maybe they do.
Communication, like the biggest thing, man. I historically so bad at it, trying to get better at it, but just communicating problems, because often like just talking about it solves everything. Like, and even if it doesn't, it at least lets everything be out in the open, and you know, taking a hypothetical scenario of someone who's really ambitious, you know, wants to work hard, and say like family doesn't support it, or family wants to do something else, whatever that is, like communicating that. And even if there still is a disagreement, it's up to that person to decide what's more important, right? Like, do they continue down their road, and then what are the consequences of that? Do they follow what they're...
That's a tough decision. How do you navigate that?
I think it's case by case. It's completely case by case.
Hard, right?
It depends on the consequences of doing each one.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on that because I haven't been in that situation.
No, I could only speak in hypotheticals.
I'd probably never be in that situation. Right?
And that's because we're lucky, right? Like, we've got backing.
We're very, very privileged. Yeah, how do you manage personal relationships, friendships, girlfriends, boyfriends?
Same sort of thing, eh? Just communication, values. Like,
is it important to be aligned before, you know, with relationships, a little bit easier in terms of intimate relationships, a little bit easier because before you commit to that, you make sure you're aligned on values, you hang out a little bit, you date for a while, you know, before you really commit to dating properly.
Yeah.
And you understand that person a lot more. Friendships, a little bit harder, right? You're almost like thrust into it. Like I look at you and I knew you from Young Enterprise. We met at the awards dinner a few years ago, and we chatted for...
We were, living together probably the third time we'd met, fourth time we'd met.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and then we met here. We were, you know, had a meeting in Auckland together, and within 2 weeks of that, we were living in a house that I hadn't even gone to, and by the time I turned up...
I hadn't gone to it either.
Yeah, and by the time we turned up, it was three times we'd met.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know how. Were we just very lucky that we got on, and we're naturally, you know, same sort of people?
I think it's a two-way street. I think we got on because I wanted to get on with you and you wanted to get on with me, right? And
well, we're forced to.
You're forced to, but I think there's still a decision for it. Like, there's certainly some people that would can make conscious decisions to not get along with someone. And I think as long as you're aligned enough on enough things, and then want to get along, like, I'm sure you'll find a way to do it. And as you said before, you and me are like complete opposite people, right? But we've got enough that's overlaps.
You know what I think it is? There's enough mutual respect for each other that we drop ego. I think ego is
sometimes.
I think ego is the biggest ball ache.
I agree.
In relationships.
I think it's the biggest ball ache in anything, man, because all it just gets in the way. It doesn't
It does.
And it just slows everything down.
I think that's the thing, right? As a young person navigating the world, I think you need to find those people that you can look up to, and whether you like them or not. You know, I was talking to someone about this the other day, or whether you like them or not, whether you want to be their friend or not, whether you want to be in a relationship with them or not, whether you've got any interaction with them or not, if you respect them, ego's out of the equation.
Sure.
Right? It's that respect to go, you know, whether I like you or not, you've done some cool stuff. I respect what you've done. My ego's out the window because at the end of the day, I respect you. We can move forward.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree.
But how do you drop ego?
I think it's an insecurity thing, man, honestly. Like, if you are insecure about certain things, I think ego is a compensation for that. And I think, say for example, that I was really insecure about, you know, my ability to do a certain thing, and I was working with you on that. I would be trying to compensate for that because I wouldn't want to let you down. I wouldn't want to expose that I'm not good at this specific thing. And so ego is then the compensator for that. And I think first step is just understand yourself, understand what you're good at, understand what you're bad at, and then also just be okay with that.
I think the first step is judgment.
Judgment of who?
Removing judgment. Because
of yourself or of the other person?
From the equation. From the equation of one and one, person and person. Because, you know, I think that's why we get on. I've got no judgment of what you do, and you've got no judgment of what I do.
I would say that's the exact same as insecurity, except on the other side.
So it's on the other side of the equation, right? the insecurity is removed if there's no judgment. If I don't feel like you're going to judge me for failing or for doing something wrong, there's no insecurity there to fuck up. But if I feel like if I fuck up, then you're going to judge me, then I'm gonna have my ego in play because I don't want to drop my barrier of I don't want him to judge me and think I'm less. Especially as a young person working with people older than me, right?
Yeah. I think it's both. I think like you have to be secure in yourself, and then you either have to not be judged or be able to deal with that judgment and be fine.
How do you deal with judgment?
Be secure. Be secure. Personally, just...
How do you find secureness in yourself? What is that process of finding it?
Time. Yeah, self-awareness, I think.
I
certainly wasn't great at it for a long time.
Is that time in the sense of it's going to take a shit long time? Or is that time in the sense of you've got to prioritize time every day to work on that and discover who you are? And whether that's journaling or writing or reading or, whatever that is, take time every day to really discover who you are, as opposed to it's going to take you 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly no psychologist, so it'd be hard to say this is the action plan. But I think there's probably day-to-day things you can do that help. But for me, it was certainly just a case of time, understanding myself, perspective, life events happening that made me appreciate things and understanding what was important. And from that, it all kind of just developed into...
I think a big part of it too is that you don't have to know who you are or what you're doing as early as people think. There's still, I'm definitely, I still haven't figured out what I really enjoy. I'm definitely on the way.
Tradie, mate.
Tradie. I think people rush into it a lot. I feel like finding yourself it's quite a hyped up thing. If you can talk about how you found yourself and how you're doing exactly what you want to do.
You're lying.
You're lying. You're lying. And
it's bullshit.
And do you know what's funny? It's also what you said before. It's a pressure thing, right? And I always get real uncomfortable when people say, oh, it's this, and talk me up because it just feels weird because one, I know I'm not that. And two, it makes it super unattainable for all these other people, right? If you say this person's amazing, just puts them on a pedestal and then people look at that and that's not me.
Back on what Grayson said, in terms of finding yourself, if you say you found yourself, you're full of shit.
Definitely not,
because
you never always
you will never find yourself. You will never truly find yourself. That is a constant journey of evolution and a constant journey of self-reflection of who you are and where your values are.
You can
and
definitely
that changes
make big strides
all the time. Yeah, but you'll never get there. You'll never be perfect.
No, we know what it is. Right?
If you say you are, it's bullshit because your values today are going to change in 10 years.
Yeah.
What you value as success today will change in 10 years. So it's a constant self-reflection piece of every day striving towards wanting to achieve that better and better so that eventually you're at the point where you are content, right? And it's that word content of I'm content with where I am, therefore there is no ego and no judgment because I don't need to be better than you. I don't need to feel like you're judging me because I know I am enough and I'm content with who I am right now.
Yeah,
I'm not content with who I am tomorrow, but that will come tomorrow. Right now I'm content.
And I think, as you say, content comes from not letting judgment affect you or not being judged, then also security in yourself of saying look, is what it is. I'm good at this. I'm not good at that. That's fine. Is what it is. Let's just deal with what we've got. Right?
Totally. And I think that content piece is very, very strong.
For sure. But yeah, I don't know how one would develop it necessarily.
I think it's a constant learning.
Life experiences.
I think it's constant learning.
It's easier for some than others. 100%. 100%.
I think it's difficult for everybody.
Because it's difficult for everyone. It's easier for some. If that paradox makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a constant journey, right? It's like I said, right now I'm content with who I am today.
Yeah.
2 years ago, when I was in high school, not content with who I am then. That person is a no-no. Who I am in 2 years, that person is a no-no. I don't know who that is. But right now I'm content, right? And that's been a long journey of constant self-reflection and constant looking intrinsically and going, who am I? What are my values? Who are the people I want around me? Who are the people I want in my life? And making sure that continues so that when I find myself in tricky situations like dealing with people that are older than me in work and business, I go, actually, I've got nothing to prove to you because I know who I am. And if you judge me, that's your own fault. I don't want to work with you anyway. And the ego's out of the equation. I don't have to try and talk myself up, try and be this, try and be that. I'm going, we're talking obviously for a reason. I'm here for a reason. I'm content.
Do you know what I just thought of? You know how I was saying before about how I'm inherently lazy and like I go hard in the other direction to compensate for that and ensure I never, slowly slip back into that. I think for me, that's probably my outlet to ensure that I stay content and stay secure, because there's those sort of key pillars in life of like your friends, your family, your relationships, your health, that having those in order, I think helps be content and be secure with yourself. It doesn't get you all the way there, but it helps. And for me, like ensuring those kind of key pillars are in line, and being like just ruthlessly adamant about that, I think is I guess for me a bit of like a step in that direction.
I think just to sum that up, I think I agree with you, and I think my like pillar of really to be content with myself and to drop that ego and everything we've talked about, to be able to work in the workforce, work with people older than me, not worry about money, all these things. My one piece is connection. And that's connection with other people, connection with you, connection with the producers, connection with these people that I work with on a daily basis, and then connection with myself. Yeah. And going, who am I? Who is this soul people talk about? Like your soul and shit. I don't believe in that, but, connection with who I am and going, this is who I am.
But you're also a more extroverted guy, right? So it's going to be different from a lot of people.
100%. But I think that connection piece of going, you may not have hundreds of friends. You may not have the family connection. You may not have the relationship. You may not have this. You may not have that. Find the thing you can connect with. And at the end of the day, that person is always yourself.
Sure.
That person, that yourself is always there. Connect with yourself.
What's that classic thing where it's like, if you're not happy single, you're not going to be happy in a relationship?
Totally.
Like, that's so true, right? You've got to be happy with yourself.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's so important, right? Like, perfect. I could go on another tangent there, but we've got time. So I think that connection with yourself is so important. Sure. We're going to wrap it up. We've got one last question for you.
Sweet.
It's the big 333. Not sure if you know what that is, but we ask all our guests. It's Monday, so we're going from last week. 3 successes from last week, 3 failures from last week, and then the 3 big goals for this week. Public accountability.
3 successes. Had a really good weekend day. Got away, bit of sun down to Tauranga, which was cool. Call that a success. It was a bit of time it had been a hectic few weeks, and the weekend before I'd flown back from overseas, arrived on a Monday, so it was like hectic. So just a bit of time to step back and breathe was good. That's 1. 2, on Waitangi Day, the Thursday, we ended up working it, which was actually good fun, because we did a bit of like a strategy session all day. So it was super chill. We just went to the office. There was like 3 of us, just yarned and threw ideas around, which was a lot of fun. And then the third one. I've got one. Mark Day just sent me some artwork that I need to review, so stoked that's finished.
Shout out to MD.
Big MD.
What's next? Losses. Ooh. 3 losses. Just getting no sleep, No, and not even because like working too hard, just being stupid about it, just being real inconsistent. Getting home at like a reasonable time, but then just messing around and then like sleeping in and stuff like that. So just messes with your cycle, which is not good. Eating pretty crap, to be honest, last week, because I was overseas, so I was eating crap there, and then didn't really make a conscious effort when I got back to fix that. And then like work-wise, work-wise, just a lot of like hard deadlines we're trying to hit at the moment, so it's just a bit hectic and have to kind of prioritize some things over others, which is I guess all part of the fun. 3 goals?
3 goals for this week.
Review my artwork and get that submitted. That's probably the big one. I'm trying to eat real healthy this week. I'm trying to like, it's stupid, but I'm trying to go like real hard and like planning stuff out. So we'll see how that goes.
You came home last night at 9:30, 10 o'clock and
got the scales out.
And cooked up a feed with the missus.
Oh mate, yep. So that's we'll see how that goes. It's supposed to last a while, but we might get a few days in and then crave Ben and Jerry's. So we'll see how we go.
Gets the best of us.
And then the third would just be probably like consistent, like just sleep routine again. Traveling, it's all messed up. especially when you're changing time zones. So just getting back, like consistent, wake up, go to work, get home, eat, like just trying to keep a bit of routine around that would be nice. Because I think like routine's a pretty interesting one, right? And I think it's different for every person. But for me, like if I don't have like a good routine, I find it very difficult to like move quickly on things and be in a good headspace. And when I'm tired, I don't make good decisions. And so super, super important is kind of building out that structure of like, this is how I eat, this is when I get up, and this is what I do during my day to ensure that I can like perform.
We'll have to get you on again to talk about that because it is an interesting thing. I'm in the middle. I have certain routines, like in the morning, I have a certain routine that I do and nothing will change that. Yeah. And at night, I've got a certain routine, nothing will change that. But in the day, I hate having a routine of like, I have to have a meeting at 10 o'clock and then this and that. I'm just
I love it.
I left that world to have the freedom of being able to do what I want when I want, not have a routine of you got to be there at 8, you've got a meeting every morning at 9, then you've got a team call at 10, then you've got strategy meetings at Thursday at 4 o'clock. Fuck that.
It doesn't necessarily have to be like meetings and stuff there, right? It can just be like your structure of your day.
Nah, fuck that.
Oh, well, Matty.
Nah, man.
Each to their own, I guess.
Anyway. That's another discussion.
Cheers, boys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Good chat, team.
Thanks for having us. And that's episode 4. See you next week, Monday 2:30 for episode 5 with our guest. Cheers, guys.
Right. Thanks very much.